All righty. Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by BetUS. That was a fourth quarter that was more than we bargained for. I got a feeling it was more than Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby thought they bargained for too. Shout out to Karl-Anthony Towns for fouling out of that one. That was the proper response, Carl. Well done. All right. The Knicks get a big win. The final score was 139 to 125 against the Toronto Raptors. For anybody who may be listening to this or watching and did not watch the game, final score not indicative of how this game went. The Knicks at one point, actually, I think early in the fourth quarter, were up by 33 points in this one. This was a game of bursts, and it was in between those bursts. It was a game that the Knicks would probably want to forget, but this is kind of what this team is so far through 29 games now, which is when it's good, it's incredible. It is awe-inspiring. It is the sort of thing that you watch and you say, my God, I didn't know basketball could be played this way. And when it's not that way, it's pretty mediocre. And sometimes it's a little bit less than mediocre. But I think the key for the Knicks, if we're going big picture for a second, is that the less than mediocre stints that we saw, I would say, quite a bit more often to start the season, those are slowly but surely going by the wayside. Not completely eliminated. There were some less than stellar moments, in a lot of recent games, but those moments are shorter, and I don't think they're coming as frequently. And more frequently are coming these bursts where you look at this team and what they're able to do, and you just say, okay, that's the team that we thought we were getting this year. And there were certainly a lot of those moments tonight. This was, again, I said the final score was not indicative of how this game went. I mean that in a few senses. Not only the fact that they were up by 33 to start the fourth quarter and, just kind of lollygagged around, if we're being frank, allowed the Raptors to not get back in it. The Raptors never got back in the game, but allowed them to make the score respectable enough that Tibbs couldn't pull the starters until the final minutes. But this was a really tight game up until the beginning of the second quarter. I'm pulling it up right now. The Knicks were down actually 32-30 after RJ Barrett converted a 2-point shot. RJ ended up having some nice numbers in this game. Fairly certain Scotty Barnes ended up having some nice numbers in this game. Those numbers didn't really matter because when the Knicks got going, that there was nothing that the Raptors could do. And the first guy I'm going to mention, I know OG Anunoby had a stat line that you can play. You could see a guy, of his caliber play multiple seasons and not necessarily have the stat line that he had. And when you pair with the defensive performance that he had, he was probably the player of the game. That said, the first guy that I'm going to talk about is Cameron Payne, because when the Knicks were down 2, a couple minutes into the second quarter, it was Cameron Payne that got the Knicks back on track. He, I believe, had 14 points in the second quarter, started by tying the game with a nice little driving floater, and ended up then just from that point forward raining threes. And it was the lineup that really turned the game around was Cameron Payne, Karl-Anthony Towns, Deuce McBride, OG Anunoby, and Josh Hart. And those 5 guys, and I sent out a message before, had only played 58 non-garbage time possessions all season long. So this is not a lineup that the Knicks have gone to a ton, which is surprising because you look at the guys that are out there and you're like, oh, that seems like something that would have got a group that would have gotten more time. Really hasn't gotten a ton of time. And perhaps part of the reason for that is the numbers weren't great. Their offensive rating was, I think, in the first percentile league-wide. They were scoring like 98 points per 100 possessions. Well, tonight, again, it wasn't Cam Payne all by himself. It was in the context of the offense. And I think DJ and definitely, and maybe Benji have been pointing this out. Definitely DJ, because he pointed. I know he pointed out on the recent film session that when Campaign and Karl-Anthony Towns are in the game together, the Knicks turn into hell on wheels as a transition team. And they start playing fast, and they start pushing the pace, and they really unnerve teams, because you got to suddenly, with Cam and Deuce out there, you got a lot of speed, and Josh Hart, and certainly OG Anunoby, needless to say, got a lot of speed and activity out there on the perimeter defensively. And I think that makes life a little bit easier for Towns on the defensive side of the ball. And then when you go into fast-paced offense and you got a guy like Towns as the trailer, willing to put up threes, and if he's not putting up threes, he's driving, he's making those crazy passes. So that's really where the game turned. That said, this was still, a 19-point game at the half, and we've all been watching the NBA for long enough that beginning of the fourth or the beginning of the third quarter maybe doesn't go your way. A game could turn in a hurry, and give the Raptors credit in general. This is a team that not only down Emmanuel Quickly tonight, down Jakob Poeltl. They haven't had Bruce Brown at all this year. They're a team that wasn't supposed to win a ton of games regardless, and they fight. They fight and they claw and they scrap and all those sorts of things. There's a lot of teams like that out there in the league right now that are building cultures, some more successful than others. Obviously, you got Houston over there in the Western Conference. You have Orlando here beating the Celtics tonight. Great win by them without, a bunch of their guys. But even some of the lesser teams, one of which is certainly this Toronto team. And I thought Andrew with Michael Grange did a fantastic job on the pregame show, and Grange pointed out how the Raptors, with the schedule they have upcoming, they could be over 500 for the next month because of how they play and how they fight. And sure enough, as I'm saying this, I'm looking through the third quarter stats right now. This was an 18-point game midway through the third. 19-point game with about 5 minutes and change to go. And then the second eruption happened. And the second eruption was courtesy of OG Anunoby. And it was funny because I was cognizant of the fact that he was perfect from the field in the first half. I think in the first half he was 5 for 5 or 6 for 6 or whatever he was. I snapped it. I'll look it up right now. He was did I not get this? No, I got it. 6 for 6. Okay. But a lot of that was based on passing, where he was obviously being a smart cutter, a timely cutter, and he was just finishing with power, which is a skill in and of itself. But it wasn't the sort of 6 for 6 half that maybe really, really makes you think a guy's on pace for a special evening. And then again, late third quarter, floodgates open. He's draining threes. He had a turnaround jump shot that I forget who was guarding him on the possession, but ended up 5-6 feet away after this spin and win. I'll borrow Clyde's phrase. And he just had it going. And it was one of those nights where, we just saw last week, Karl-Anthony Towns have a really special game against the team that drafted him, and ultimately said, you know what? You're not worth 50 whatever $1 million a year to us. That's not how, we're not going to end up in the second apron for you. Well, OG Anunoby's team ultimately, they knew the payday was coming, and they said, we don't think that if we invest that amount of money in you, with how much we have invested in obviously Barnes and with what we still need to do, we don't think that's a good enough payoff for us. And I think they nailed it on the broadcast today. I forget if it was Breen or Crawford. And by the way, Jamal Crawford just continues to do an exceptional job on these broadcasts. I want Clyde to do games forever, but if it can't be him, certainly wouldn't mind Jamal being a big part of the Knicks team at MSG Network. Anyway, they said these guys are always going to get up a little bit more for teams that traded them. And I think OG did tonight, as my daughter was trying to get here. Just take it. Take it. Here. Have it. There you go. It's all yours. Go away. So great game by OG Anunoby. And the guy that I joked about him fouling out before, but I thought the third guy that really deserves to be mentioned in separately from everybody else on the team, and again the team played really well tonight, is Karl-Anthony Towns. And Towns ended up tonight with, we were fawning over OG Anunoby getting 31 points on 15 shots. Well, guess what? Karl-Anthony Towns, 31 points on 15 shots. Extended his double-double streak to, I believe it's, is it 18 games now? Whatever it is. He only has a couple guys in front of him. Of course, Walt Bellamy, he's going to have to, got ways to go catch old Walt. But 31 points, 10 assists, or 10 rebounds, 7 assists. And just another really solid game from Karl-Anthony Towns. He more and more, you're always going to have those handful of drives or plays around the rim where he either is in the best position or he's contesting, and it doesn't even. It's like, man, how is that a contest? It doesn't feel like a contest, You're always going to have those, but they didn't get him to be Rudy Gobert. They wanted to trade for Rudy Gobert, they would have traded for Rudy Gobert. They got him to be Karl-Anthony Towns. And I think there's another game, and coming off of, a really rough outing, arguably his worst game of the year. And I thought coming at the beginning of this game in the first quarter, I thought he had a rough first quarter. I thought he was a little shaky. I thought his drives, that's the one thing we've seen in the offensive arsenal so far this year that has been not ideal, is where it's kind of tunnel vision drives. And again, DJ and Benji, and they've been pointing this out. Like, he's an exceptional standstill passer, but when he gets on the move, that's where things get a little dicey. So you saw a little bit of that in the first quarter, but he cleaned all that stuff up, and you saw him, I thought, get more patient as the game got on. One of my favorite plays from him of the night was where he got Scotty Barnes on the block, and it was just patient, little flip, jump hook, and hit, and he had to laugh with Barnes afterwards, because, like, I don't know what they said, but it was, I would imagine something along the lines of, like, don't worry, man, what are you going to do? Nothing you could do against that. And he had an even prettier move that reminded me, I got to say, it reminded me of Hakeem Olajuwon with the footwork that he displayed. So great game from Towns. And again, perfect effort? No, not a perfect effort. Far from it, in a game where you were only up by 2 in the first quarter and where you got outscored by 15 in the fourth quarter. But they did the work when they needed to do the work. And we're looking now at a team that is 19-10. They are continuing to take advantage of this easy part of their schedule, which is what they need to do. You can only play the teams on your schedule. That's all. And I know there will continue to be fans out there, and rightly so, by the way. Like, again, you put together a team that is purported to be a championship contender. The expectations are sky high. But I will just, like, remind folks, this is the NBA. Can't take any win for granted. You look around tonight, and I was, like, trying to pay attention to as many games as possible because 28 teams were playing tonight. And so I won't even talk about the Timberwolves, but Timberwolves lost to the Hawks tonight in uninspiring fashion. But, like, the Celtics go into Orlando. They lost to an Orlando team that, again, missing Franz, missing Paolo. Pretty sure they were missing a couple other guys. The Cavs took their game against the Utah Jazz in Cleveland, went down to the final couple of minutes. That was a one-possession game with a couple of minutes left. So you don't take anything for granted. You take care of business when it's time to take care of business. And the Knicks certainly did that. Autograph signature moment of the game. Man, while I'm tempted to go with Josh Hart singing on the bench along to All I Want for Christmas Is You, And I obviously have to shout out the OG Anunoby spin, turnaround, fadeaway jumper. I think the best moment of this game for me was the Josh Hart pass to, was it Jalen Brunson? I'm pretty sure it was Jalen Brunson under the hoop, a cutting Jalen Brunson. It was, I think you could argue that was as good a pass as Josh Hart has made all year. Maybe as good a pass as he's made as a Knick. Outstanding pass. It made the score. I know that it was when they had, it was Brunson. It made the score 94-70, and it was in the midst of that big third quarter push. So that'll get our autograph signature moment of the game. Shout out to Autograph. Go check out the Autograph app for exclusive content from all your favorite Knicks content creators, and just an opportunity to get all of your Knicks content and get credit for it, and get rewarded for all the stuff you are doing anyway as a fan. Okay. I think that's it for me at the top. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to say before we got going. Oh yeah, you know what? Actually, one more very quick. I mean, again, all the guys I thought played well. Brunson didn't shoot well, but he played well. Deuce Pride, real quick before we move on to the super chats. Deuce Pride ended up having a nice, decent enough scoring game, 12 points on eight shots. But he came in and he hit 2 threes when he first entered the game in the first quarter that I thought were big for momentum. And then indirectly, I think you could argue led to the big turnaround, because the Knicks in the first quarter, aside from playing bad transition defense and turning the ball over, those two things do not go great together. They were not really hustling as much as they probably could have. Well, there was a play where Deuce Pride could have got on the floor and didn't. And Tom Thibodeau, and shout out to DJ, he pointed this out on social. Tom Thibodeau was letting him have it. And so that play indirectly inspired, it obviously Deuce didn't mean not to go on the floor. It's like, it's something that if he had to do it over again, obviously next time he's diving on the floor. And by the way, you saw him dive on the floor late in this game. But that moment and Tibbs getting on the guys for that, I thought really was the impetus of them upping their intensity and really turning the game around